And Sarah, it's nice to have you here. I want you to know that, I'll call the roll first and then I'll tell you something I've done. Okay, calling the meeting to order. Nancy.
Aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Grimwood, appointee of the NRC.
Okay, yes, Nancy. You want to try again?
Historical Commission. I was at the end.
I got it. Hi, Tom. Tom, are you with us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a little bit of an audio problem tonight. Tom Kern, Select Board appointee. Excuse me.
Thank you. John.
John Kratzley, Select Board appointee.
Thank you. Peter.
Peter Ward, Select Board appointee.
Thank you. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul Bohm, Recreation Commission appointee.
Thank you. And Burton?
Burton Flint, Planning.
And Diane Proctor, Select Board appointee. I believe that's a full group. I want to welcome all of those who are visiting tonight. Linda Escobedo has been very helpful in a variety of things. So thank you, Linda, for being here and for joining us in these conversations. There has been a lot going on between our last meeting and this meeting. And I want you to know that I've asked Kate Hodges to join us tonight because the recreation proposal is one that it's not that it received short shrift, but it was one that we didn't have a chance to really discuss about how urgent it might be or important it might be to the recreation department. So I've asked Kate to join us, and if it's all right, I'd like to start with Kate just presenting her thoughts right now on the recreation appointment and application. Thank you, Kate, wherever you are.
I am.
There she is. Hi, Kate.
Yeah, hi, how are you? Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you for having me. So I know that you've spoken to Anna McEwen, and I wanted to let everybody know that she had her daughter. I was given permission to let everyone know that. So she had her daughter. Yep. Mom and baby are doing great. She was 9.5 pounds, a real big girl.
Wow.
And she is so cute, just absolutely adorable. So, you just want to pinch her cheeks. She's just perfect in every way. So I could start on a good note. So this idea for having some type of, we're calling it an update, but truly one for recreational facilities in particular that also takes in the passive recreation and open space. A full assessment of sort of what we have in town and what we need hasn't been done for about 12 or 13 years. There was a very small study that was conducted right as Danner DeStefano was retiring. And that was about the time that I was started in Concord. And so I don't have a lot to say about how that came about. I tried to do my homework on it, and essentially what they were looking for was something to help with doing an assessment of the needs for playing fields in particular. But what we have found, and you all well know, as I've been in front of you for a variety of reasons, certainly over the past 5 years, is that there are a lot of parkland projects that have come up and needs that people from the community have said to either the town manager's office or planning, NRC, and most recently recreation, sort of about the need for the non-conventional sport areas. There's a big desire to increase opportunities for pickleball, which is becoming, one of the largest growing, non-contact sports that are around. We were able to do some of the pickleball striping when we did the ride out park, but since then many more have come forward. There's also a desire to look at sort of the gym space that we have available in town and see if there's a way that when those areas are being resurfaced or anything like that, if we could do some additional striping. And so the idea and the impetus behind this was to try to have some type of community-wide discussion to decide what do we have too many of, what do we have not enough of, what do we see as something that people are really interested in. For example, we don't have any place that people can play shuffleboard. And maybe that isn't a huge need, but we are hearing sometimes when we talk to the COA, that it might be nice to have some of the things that get people out, get them active. The COA director has often said to me that we have sort of a silver tsunami where we have these, younger seniors that still want to remain active, but don't necessarily want to join your conventional basketball leagues and things like that. And so what is it that the community desires? And if we already have it, that's wonderful. If it's a simple modification, like we did with tennis courts, and we just stripe them also for pickleball, that's an easy, low-hanging fruit. Something larger like the pool, for example, at Emerson is failing at Emerson Field, but we're not sure whether people really think that that's an asset to the community. And would that space be better used simply for open space or another sport court? Or do people really want an outdoor pool? Is a splash pad better? So that's the kind of things that we're talking about. It didn't necessarily include the fields at the high school, because those are really programmed for the high school and then through the sports leagues that are in town. But we were planning on going over some of the fields that are in and around the middle schools and talking about some of those fields. Right now, they're predominantly soccer fields, but should they be lined for multiple sports? And so that was sort of the impetus behind this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. I think some of the questions that have emerged are, is this something that the town could fold into their own budget with some alacrity, with some ease for next year? And could that be covered? And how much of this is professional evaluation required, or just really good communication, which you do so well, with the community itself? So how would you respond to those two questions? And then I'll see if other people have other questions.
Sure. So as I'm sure most of you have heard, we are experiencing a challenging budget year. We don't know the full impacts of COVID and probably won't for some time. We have not been able to recoup 100% of the receipts that have been lost. And so we're trying to deal with that. Last year, we did not give as much of the performance increases or what we call structure movement, but in the private sector, it's called cost of living increases. And so we're trying to catch up with that. I think if anybody was able to watch Carrie LaFleur's presentation last evening, she talked a little bit about capital and how we were at sort of a 2 million mark, and we really dropped down into the 800,000, and we're trying to creep our way back up, but certainly can't make up the difference between the two in one budget cycle. And so we're still sort of realizing that. So I would say comfortably no, that the capital budget certainly could not absorb this expense this year. Does that mean it can't absorb it in a future year? I couldn't say, because I think it depends on, the recovery of a number of different factors, which I'm sure that here. One of the things that I think I was asked, I'm not sure whether it was in Anna's first time coming or between that and the second time, but was about the recreation revolving fund. And while I understand and appreciate, the exploration of all the different funding strategies, I would have to say that I am generally not supportive of using fee monies that are, generated for programming for something that is really community based and something that we wouldn't be charging a fee for. And in speaking, with some members of the Rec Commission and others just who generally have asked the questions, I've given the example, if you pay X amount of dollars for summer camp, I don't necessarily agree with the idea that you would pay X plus $20 for summer camp, and then that $20 is used for something else, some other study or something for, capital programs that we're not going to charge for. And we aren't looking to charge people to use the parks and open spaces. That's sort of the beauty of living in a rural area and doing what we're doing to preserve all of that. So I really wouldn't be in favor for that. I don't think it's fair. And I think it sets a bad precedent. That said, if it's worth more discussion, we can certainly do that. And I'm sorry, the second part of the question was if we don't do it?
Is whether this needs a $75,000 professional evaluation or whether it just needs a really thoughtful evaluation by the Recreation Committee and others who really know these grounds well.
Sure. So I imagine that you all either as citizens or committee members or both have participated in a number of surveys. And I think oftentimes I have found that the data is only as good as the person or persons that are responsible for collecting it. And so we initially talked about perhaps having some type of informal survey, but we're going to use the data from this to really set a benchmark system and a streamlined capital plan. And I think that it would be a mistake to have any staff member be 100% in control of that, because I think that it can lead to questions as to the validity of the data. And that said, I'm not an expert in that, and Anna is not an expert in that. We're subject matter experts of sorts in other areas, but certainly not in that. And so I don't think that I would presume to be as good or effective or efficient as somebody who does this for a living and can really come in and ask the right questions in a non-leading way, gather information in a way that, they don't live here. They don't have to, report to us. I'm not sure if I asked somebody, do you want to pool at Emerson? And they thought that I really did, if they would feel comfortable saying that to me and thinking that I have some type of vested interest. So it really is sort of this outside person to gather the data and give us something to work with, some framework.
Thank you, Kate. I see that Paul and Peter have questions. Paul, you want to begin?
Yeah, just a statement. The plan, as I know it, is not just a survey. The survey is a vehicle for putting together a plan, an inventory, community input, and then a strategic plan, which includes capital, projected capital requests over the next few years. So the survey is part of this, but it's not the whole thing. But I just want to return briefly, and I spoke with Diane a little bit about this, to the last meeting we had, at which point the select board had just finished their discussion of the various priorities of the projects. And in our discussion, we hadn't gotten the math spreadsheet yet. So there were several reports about what was said there. And what was said about this project is that there was a sense that the select board said that it should be funded by the town or that it could be delayed. And so I actually wanted to see what was actually said there. So I went to the video, and neither of those two things was actually said. This project, along with a few others, was given a mixed priority, a lower priority, and there were several priorities. But I think importantly, what Linda said, and she's on here, so, and I played this several times. Linda said that she did not think we should not fund the project. I went back. I just wanted to accurately report what I think what the select board said about this, with a caveat that what the select board said was, they said, look, CPC, these are just our observations. These aren't binding, make your own decisions. So putting that aside, I think what Linda said is not only applied to this project, but to all the other projects, the worthy projects, that we should not fund them, but we should figure out a way to allocate funds, meaning that maybe this and other projects don't get the full funding, but we can move money around. And I do think that in this project, Kate, that the $75,000 amount is an estimate. And I think we could fund this, the CPC could fund this at a lower amount. So I just wanted to set the record straight about what the select board said or did not say about this and other projects as we move forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I would just comment that two members of the select board put this as a low priority, low, middle, and high. One put it as a high priority, and that really what Linda said, which was, I thought, articulate and very helpful at the end of the meeting, was that each of these projects is valuable. Each of these projects has merit, and the degree to which we can find ways to fund as many of them as possible, is really a good idea. But I don't think I think that was really all she was saying. It was a very gracious conclusion. a detailed discussion that the select board had. So thank you, Paul, very much. Peter and then John.
Yeah, I don't have a question just as much as perspective, looking back at the last strategic plan that was done. It's very easy to come up with a wish list, based on surveys and, various meetings from within the community. But it's really helpful to look at this through the lens of benchmark data as well. So, what's happening on a regional and a national basis in terms of recreational facilities. And then, being able to compare what we have for resources here in the town, with that benchmark data, that I think adds just a little bit more credibility in terms of what we need to do moving forward from a capital perspective.
That's a very helpful comment, Peter. Thank you so much. So the benchmarking is what you would emphasize as a valuable part of this proposal, right?
Yeah, and that's something that's hard to do from within the town because
Right.
we all have a good purview of what's happening here, but it's pretty interesting to understand what's happening on a regional and national basis as well.
Thank you. And of course, this increase in pickleball, one would have to be living in a cave. Oh wait, many of us have been. But anyway, we have to be living in isolation. Oh wait, anyway, to not know how many people are loving that. So thank you, Peter. John.
Oh, Kate, I wanted to ask if the $75,000 number was generated in the office, or is it from a bid or a sense of what a bid would look like? Where'd the number come from?
Yep, sure. So the study that was conducted in 2015, I went back and looked at the scope, and the scope is substantially smaller than what we're looking for here. And in those, it was bid in 2014, conducted in 2015, was $42,300. So I estimated for a 35% increase in scope. And then I went and talked to 2 different companies off the record that we are currently in contract with on 2 separate projects that had some master planning work that was done. And I asked what the general rate would be per hour for both the information gathering, which is done at a lower hourly rate, and then, the aggregating of the data and then presentations. And we came to somewhere around the 75,000 mark. And that was based on 127 acres of, what I consider to be active or relatively active recreation parcels. And then, some chosen NRC parcels, which I hadn't fleshed out necessarily because obviously that would be under the purview of the NRC director. But
Thank you.
That's a very helpful response. John, does that help?
Yes, of course.
Terrific. So do you have a follow-up question is what I'm trying to figure out?
Not at all.
All right. Okay.
Keep
Paul.
moving.
Oh, yep.
There you go. I have a follow-on clarification, and I think it's in the application. I think Anna also inquired, to Peter's point about benchmarking. I think she went out to other towns, several other towns who had done strategic plans, and got an estimate about what those plans cost. So I think that was additional data that she brought into that estimate. But as I said, it is just an estimate, and
And Kate has said to us quite clearly, Paul, hasn't she, that what you put in, you get out. So we obviously want somebody who is to undertake this. We need somebody who has the professional acumen to manage the evaluate the whole study successfully.
I'm sorry, I just want to be absolutely clear that I'm not saying that the last company that did it, didn't do a good job.
Oh, no.
I just feel that the scope of work was insufficient for the robust amount of programming that we have. And I want to make sure no one is thinking that I said that they didn't do a good job, because they did. It was just the scope was too small, in my opinion.
And it was 7 years ago, Kate. I mean, things have changed.
Sure.
Yeah. So, Kate, thank you for taking time. Let me just
Thank
make
you for inviting me.
wait just a minute. I want to make sure, is there anybody who in the audience who also has a comment or a question? We'd be happy to hear that right now. If you could just raise your hand or use the raise your hand icon, that would be terrific. Okay, seeing none, Kate, thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy
Okay.
holidays, everyone.
And to you too, Kate. Okay. Next, we have a variety of projects from whom we've received new information. And I think that it would be appropriate to go to that aggregate new information and see what people have kind of made of that data. So the first one to look at is Marcia Rasmussen is once again graciously spending her evening with us. Hello, Marcia. And Liz Rust is here. Hooray. Thank you, Liz. And Linda Escobedo was also part of the discussions that we had with Stuart Sagamore. And, we don't thank Heather enough. She just quietly manages all of this. So Heather, thank you. Okay. The Assabet, not that we have never discussed this before, the Assabet Bluff project. Marcia, you want to show us some things on a slide and discuss what you've seen with this?
Well, I do, but I also want to mention that Lee Smith from the CHDC and Polly Reeve and Krista Collins from Concord Land Conservation Trust and Sudbury Valley trustees are also available. That group met with the neighborhood this evening. So they shared this same information that I'm hoping to share with you. Hold in just a moment.
And Lee, thank you for being here. I should have recognized you right away, and Krista and Polly as well. So.
Thanks for having us.
So I believe that Heather has distributed some, oh dear. I haven't been able to share just yet. Share screen, there we go.
You need to be a co-host to do that?
No, I had to move back and forth between screens, so I apologize for the delay. This supplemental project summary was sent to Heather this morning, and I believe that she has shared it with the CPC members.
Yes.
Great. So we've continued to look long and hard at what we're being asked and what we're hearing from the neighborhood, and the conversation that was had with Stuart Sagamore at the Community Preservation Coalition on Friday.
And Marcia, you just want to remind everybody who he is and what his role is in all of this?
I was just going to go there.
Oh, sorry.
he is the executive director of the Community Preservation Coalition, and he provides guidance to communities that have questions about CPC funding and making sure that it is used appropriately and directed to the right projects, and that you have the right conditions in place. So we were joined by Keith Bergman, who is the Affordable Housing Trust chair of that newly formed committee, and Keith is also a source of some of the funding that we're hoping to acquire for this land acquisition project. So we have revised. We've provided supplemental information to you based on these conversations. So we're now seeking to redefine the land and to redefine the contributions from different groups. And so I'm going to scroll quickly down to our funding sources, because I think that's really important here. And then I will show you the plans that have evolved. So now looking at, again, the $500,000 for community housing and $500,000 for open space from the CPC. In addition, the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust of $450,000 and the Concord Housing Foundation of $50,000 for a total of $1 million for the community housing piece. And then having the open space fundraising and some grants that we're working on for the additional open space housing funds. I'm going to stop sharing so I can pull up my other plans for you.
Marcia, while you're doing that, is there amount of money we have to put down to hold this project?
There will be, we're hoping to have some kind of agreement in place with the owners, and it's a 5% down, fully refundable amount. And, oh dear. I can't chew gum and pull up plans at the same time, I'm afraid. And that would be about $140,000. So we're looking at how we can achieve that. The Affordable Housing Trust has committed a percentage of funds that we might be able to use. Okay, first I'm going to share the revised 6-lot subdivision plan. I hope you can see that now.
Yes.
So what you see is the 6-lot subdivision plan with the existing house lot as lot 1, modified slightly, so it's a full 20,000 square feet, which is required in the zoning district. A modified lot 2A, a modified lot 3A, and then 4A, 5A, and 6A. This plan needed to be revised to have the street actually conform to the subdivision rules and regulations, and will be our starting point. And so what our new, I'm going to stop sharing again and show you where we are today. And I've lost my train of thought, so please remind me where I'm going.
You're going to show us the other map that is
Okay.
now the revised version.
Okay. This shows more dramatically what we heard from Stuart on Friday, in that for affordable housing to fund this property or this project, and for the community housing for the open space, we need to understand that the value is in each of the pieces of land. So this plan shows parcel A, which is going to be the community housing piece. It's comprised of lots 1 and 2 in that former plan that you saw. And the remaining land with the access out to Upland Road retains its value as the open space piece, being a composite of lots 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this more clearly shows or demonstrates how the funding can support each of these interests. We haven't shown you what the housing might look like, because I think there needs to be a community discussion about that. It could be what we have proposed, is that there would be 5 units of affordable housing, 5 total, including the 2-family. That we need to assess the 2-family to determine that it can be renovated and continue as a 2-family that is for affordable housing purposes. And then the proposal is to build a triplex or 3 additional units. And this is something that was done when the Burke land was acquired, which is over on Old Bedford Road. The then Affordable Housing Trust, which was a different group, or Concord Housing Trust, different group, but they built a triplex behind the existing single-family Burke house that was immediately adjacent to the Burke land. The Housing Authority also built 2 duplexes on a small piece of land that was carved off of the Amendalia purchase back in 2008. So we have experience in building fully affordable projects in a couple of situations where we've preserved open space and had community housing. So this is where the proposal has gone after a lot of public input through these meetings and through the various letters that were submitted to the CPC, and then the meetings that the open space groups have held, and now that affordable housing has been participating in those conversations. As I said, we don't have a plan showing where these units exactly would go, because I would like to have follow-up conversations with groups that actually build fully affordable projects, such as Habitat for Humanity or the Concord Housing, Concord Housing Authority, I'm sorry. So I'm watching emergency vehicles go past my house right now, so I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. And I'm going to stop sharing, and then I think you have these plans in your, were sent to you earlier today from
Yeah.
Heather.
Yeah.
So if you have specific questions, I'm here to answer, and we'll rely on the partners that we've put together in this effort. So.
Well, thank you, Marcia, so much. I'd like to, for those who have not been listening or been following this discussion, the major change, there are two major changes. One is a smaller space for the housing, and secondly, it's all affordable now, which is different than the original plans. And I'm going to step in and just exercise the prerogative of the chair to ask one question, Marcia. Of the materials you've sent us, and I'm sorry they're not going to, I'm going to have to read a sentence aloud. It says, from that meeting, and that's the one referring to the meeting with Stuart Sagamore, became abundantly clear, this is penned by Marcia, abundantly clear to me that the housing portion of this acquisition needs to be 100% affordable, and that the space land remaining needs to retain its value as potentially developable. Now, that particular sentence concerned me or confused me. Can you explain what that means and why it's written that way?
Because what Stuart was saying is that we can't take away the value of the open space. If we carve off a piece of the upland, that right of way, to add it to the affordable housing units, what I understood for Stuart, and maybe further clarification is necessary, but what I understood him to say is, if we take away that appearance of a right of way, we are taking away the value, the appraised value, the highest and best use value of that open space parcel. And it has more value because it has that access off of Upland Road. That supports the request to the CPC for investing the $500,000 and then to whoever's investing in the open space piece. Now, there may be the opportunity to revise lot lines in the future, but I don't know that that wasn't clear. That wasn't what I understood Stuart to say.
Okay, because I just to say that my understanding was, and we'll have to turn to Linda, who was also there, and incidentally, Keith Bergman is considered Mr. CPC. He's apparently a real pro at all this. So it was great to have him on the call on what Heather thinks. My understanding was that what we were investing in was really open space, recreation and open space on the one hand, and on the other hand, we were investing in land for affordable housing. And that those were two very distinct propositions, and that eliminated or alleviated the anxieties the neighbors might feel about the development of that parcel of land.
Well, because if CPC funds are used, a conservation restriction would have to be placed on the open space parcel. So that would be part and parcel of all of this conversation and discussion.
Well,
so,
I think that has to be part of, I believe that it would be prudent to have that be a part of it.
Right.
Because otherwise what we've done is leave the barn door wide open. For
Diane, I think you're misunderstanding the intention of what I was saying is that we can't diminish the value of the open space to pay what it's worth.
Okay.
If I have a piece, I mean,
I got it. So what you're saying is that if we don't say that it retains that value, that then it's not going to be worth the $500,000 we're being asked to put down for that property.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Marcia. I just think we're in, as Stuart said, this is the most complicated application he's ever seen. So, we're obviously in some interesting territory. Sarah, and then Peter, and then Paul.
Thank you. Marcia, I understand you're not in a position yet to show us, a more detailed final plan, but could you say anything about the access road, please, and whether you know for sure where that it could go somewhere in this plan you're showing?
Well, I think I showed previously a plan showing the access from over the 406 Old Marlborough Road.
Okay.
And
Okay,
that's
so you're
where it
thinking that would
continue
be the
being.
access. Okay, yeah,
Yes.
I was assuming that. So I guess I was really just checking that you know for sure that that would be viable from a planning point of view, as best you can at this point.
Well, by limiting the number of units, I definitely think it would be viable, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's an important question. Peter.
You're
Peter,
on
we
mute,
can't
Peter.
hear you. Oh,
There we go.
here we go.
Um,
I'm going to get everybody on the committee a t-shirt that says, please. unmute." Okay.
So Marcia, I'm looking at the model concept 1A-6 lot PDF, and it shows the various lots, but what it doesn't show is the delineation in terms of where the open space will lay into this schematic. And I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, the open space would be all of the right of way plus lots 3, 4, 5, and 6 entirely.
It's in the second.
Say that again.
All of the proposed right of way and cul-de-sac plus lots 3, 4, 5, and 6. Only lots 1 and 2 would be combined to be the affordable housing parcel.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lee, do you want to add something?
Sorry, just in case it wasn't clear, the first plan shows what could be developed as of right as single family homes, and the second plan is what we're proposing, with the distinction between the open space parcel and the community housing parcel.
Which is, I understand it, Lee, means if this were to go on the open market as a property and someone came in, not us, and not affordable housing, and anybody else wanted to develop it, that's the kind of possibility for development of that land, right?
Correct.
One option, yes.
Peter, does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Paul.
Hey, Marcia, good evening. Forgive me, you may have answered this question in one of the many sessions you've given us. Can you say a little bit more on the $1.4 million of open space funding from various sources, what those sources are and what the level of commitment is for that amount of money?
I think I will have to turn to Polly and Krista, but I do know that Delia Kay is in the process of preparing a grant application for the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is federal funding program. And I believe it's up to $750,000 for that grant. But Polly and Krista, you may have more information.
I can speak a little bit to that. It's going to be a heavy lift. Let's put it that way. It's a lot of money to raise for a piece of land, and our early indications are that there's a lot of support in the community. We are hopeful that we will get to that number. Certainly this grant, which Delia and Krista are working on together, is really key, and we hope that comes through. The fundraising effort will be spearheaded by the Concord Land Conservation Trust and SBT, and we will be reaching out to as many people as we can find to help make this happen. It is going to be a major effort, and I can't make that anything but what it is. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of generosity. But as I said to the neighbors earlier this evening, Concord looks the way it looks because people have been really generous and really wise and have set aside important land in the past. We hope that this will build on that legacy. So no
Thank you,
promises, but lots of hope.
That's terrific and very helpful. Krista, do you and your cat wish to add to this?
It's his time, it's his cozy time of night. No, Polly covered it, and yeah, I think the main message, we're gonna hit the ground running in January, assuming the CPC supports supports the project, and we won't go to town meeting, if we're halfway there. So, we'll have to get as much in place, as many pledges in place as we can, as early as possible, and then just bring home the message that nobody's making land anymore, and we only have one shot at these things. So
thank you so much. Paul, does that answer your questions?
Well, just on timing, you may have mentioned this, Krista, or alluded to it. does this all have to be in place before town meeting or substantially in place? What has to be in place for this to go before the public?
Well, my understanding is that closing has to happen sometime around July. With the Land and Water Conservation Fund, it's kind of a two-part approval process. First, because the money flows from the federal government, Department of the Interior, through the state. So the state will review plans, proposals, and give initial approval, and then it gets kicked down to Washington for final approval. And the tricky part of these grants is the feds can take like up to 2 years to kind of get through the whole process. But you usually have indication that they're going to fund the project earlier than that. So once you get through the state approval, it's pretty guaranteed that you'll get the federal okay. There's just a lot of red tape. So it's possible that they'll need to be sort of a bridge loan of some sort, bridge funding to kind of carry the property and then and wait for the grant to be finalized and then have the town or the land trust purchase it if the land trust ends up being the fee owner.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Sarah.
Thank you. If I may, I'd just like to come back to when Diane was asking about the land having to remain potentially developable, because I'm a little confused because we know also the open space will have a restriction order put on it. So wouldn't the conservation restriction order then make it not developable?
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. And one of the things that Stuart, but one of the things that Stuart said on Friday is that we need to provide you, the CPC, with an appraisal. So the plan that I'm taking back to Avery Associates to prepare an updated appraisal is for the parcels that, as you see them, parcel A and parcel B. I think through town meeting, we will be saying, no, we're not developing the land, but the value is there. And then in the meanwhile, I think through Heather, we'll go back to Stuart and say, okay, if we demonstrate the value is there for this investment by the Community Preservation Committee, can we then modify these lot lines in a way that might make it make more sense for both the affordable housing and for the open space? So that's a question that still needs a little more research, but you will be getting an appraisal. And the other thing is that this will be a separate warrant article. It won't be the list because things might change as we move forward, as fundraising efforts change or revise. If affordable housing interests are able to raise more money because the land is actually more valuable than what we think, perhaps the percentage should change between what we're seeking from CPC. So it might be a 60-40, 600,000, 400,000, or whatever. So we'd like to have that kind of flexibility, and that's why it would be one of the reasons why it might be a separate warrant article.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, but by town meeting, you're hoping that you'll be able to reassure the community that with the conservation order, this land would not be developed in the future if we were to buy it. Correct. I think that's really important because otherwise we're just going to have all the same old questions coming again and again.
If we buy it, it's protected.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And Marcia, you answered so beautifully the two questions that I was going to ask before we get to John, which is to just remind everybody, this will probably be a separate warrant article. So it will probably be pulled out of the CPC presentation, an asterisk, a footnote, and please see warrant article number, blum, 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 whatever it is at the time. And secondly, I just wanted to say that there is something called CPC bond money available. Mm-hmm. And Stuart mentioned this to Heather and me when we were on the original phone call with him 2 weeks ago. And he said some CPC organizations borrow money, as it were, under a bonding, therefore much less interest rates and everything else, borrow money in order to help pay for this kind of project. He said, in fact, in some towns, some CPC would buy the whole lot by the whole thing, you know, for the $1,000,008, and just say, all right, here we are, we're going to buy it. So there are funding sources available that we have yet to, you know, to thoroughly, I think, investigate. And so that's just something to kind of keep in the back of our collective minds as we look at how this goes forward and how this is managed. And so, okay. And as for ratios, I think that's really important, because it may be that we've got the ratios in the wrong place. They might not be 500, 500, it might be 600, 400, 700, 300. So all of that will depend upon the evaluation, which we've yet to receive.
Right.
John.
Yeah, I had a question for Lee, if he's still there.
He is.
Yeah, from an affordable housing perspective, what were the considerations in your mind about the reduction to just 2 lots?
Primarily, the input we received from the community, as well as the input we received from the newly formed Affordable Housing Trust and other stakeholders. The trust was concerned with our initial ask, which would have effectively depleted their entire budget moving forward, and then concerns about asking for even additional money to fund the Affordable Housing Trust, as well as the interest in creating more open space than was additionally proposed. So I think all the stakeholders heard all that, and this is our response to that, to try to truly make this a win-win project. Speaking for the CHDC, even creating one new affordable unit is extremely challenging. And while we may have been ambitious in our initial approach to it, we think creating 5 affordable housing units is extremely valuable, in addition to creating this additional open space for the town.
And I believe, Lee, I speak correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe out of this plan, you actually get more affordable housing than you would have potentially out of the original plan.
That is probably true.
Yeah.
So when you say 5 units, are there 5 units in the 2 lots?
So there's 2 existing units right now that we would renovate, and then there would be 3 new units created.
On parcel A?
If that.
Yes, on parcel A.
Yeah.
It hasn't been determined if it will be all in one building, or if they might be 3 tiny homes, or what that would look like. I think that's a further conversation that we need to have with developers of affordable housing or the housing authority, to find out what is the need. And recall that we're going to be undertaking a housing production plan this coming year. So that might help inform how to use this land for affordable housing purposes.
And Marcia, when Keith Bergman, because he's done a lot of this, and I said, well, could you really do this could you really create a triplex that somebody would wish to develop? He said, oh, no problem. He said he's done it in Nantucket. He's done it in Provincetown or Providence. I can't remember right now. Provincetown. I thought it was Provincetown. But when I said that the other day, I thought, was I right? In Provincetown. So he has a lot of experience with this and knows companies that would be willing to do this. So it's not as pie in the sky as it may seem to some on the call. John, does that answer your questions, or would you like to keep going?
No, I just think it's important that we have a mix of views on this committee about the importance of affordable housing versus open space. And I think it's important to understand how this came about, because I think the potential for some affordable housing was lost.
Thank you, John. Tom.
Thanks, Diane. I think it was the original proposal for up to 12 units.
No, one of the plans I showed was an 11-unit PRD, where there was going to be a mix of affordable and market rate to help subsidize the affordable units.
I understand.
And that was the max of what a PRD could be. We had actually pulled it back to something more like along the lines of 8 new plus 2 existing, and it was slowly dropping down. But then after the conversation with Stuart, it it just made a lot of sense. And given that we've already done it in 2 other locations, the Burke land and the Amendalia land acquisitions, we know it can be done. And so that's.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. I one additional question, Marcia. I just want to make sure I understood. I think you clarified this earlier, but I'm not sure it stuck. When the new appraisal comes forward, might that redefine the boundary and the scale of A versus B, or A and B? Will that have if we find that the value of one parcel and the other evolves somehow, that will also allow the definition of the 2 parcels to evolve, or no, not necessarily?
Not necessarily. The appraisal is of the what they call the highest and best use, the plan that you can do by right under subdivision control law, and that's the 6-lot subdivision plan with the road. We had to revise that plan because there was something in the layout of the road that didn't conform with the subdivision rules and regulations. So that clarifies it. Getting the valuation from the appraiser showing what the value of A and B are gives you clear definition of how you are funding this project and how the community will be funding this project. So we'll better understand the value.
Yeah, good. I understand. I was just wondering if it, then enabled you to provide a little bit more square footage in A if you needed it to make that, completely viable, but not necessarily. It's not going to allow you to change the definition.
That's the question we have to ask Stuart.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All of these questions are so important. Lee, before I go to Peter.
Thank you. I just want to make clear that all the figures that we're discussing tonight are simply for the acquisition costs. So for the renovation of the existing 2 units and the construction of the 3 new units, those are going to have to be from other sources of funds. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that. But that will not be this year.
Yeah, I suspect we'll be seeing you again. It's my best guess. Peter.
Yeah, and perhaps I missed this point earlier, but has a decision been made, or is it expected to be made in terms of where the access for these units will be? Will it be on Upland or Old Marlborough Road?
It's right off Old Marlborough. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Diane. Old Marlborough Road.
Yep.
Okay.
So the concern the neighbors have had, and I've spent some time over there now looking, the Upland Road, exit or egress proves to be a problematic one. And so this eliminates that problem. And that's another exquisite aspect of this proposal.
And by reducing the number of units that are constructed, it reduces the impact of this additional development.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, now I want to see if there are people in our community and observers who have questions. Before I go to Mary, and Mary, I'll call on you just nanoseconds. I want to ask Linda Escobedo, does our discussion correspond with your memory of our discussion with Stuart, or do you have questions about it?
Yeah, I think you've done a great job of capturing it. I just want to again reiterate, however, for all of us, including myself, that the new proposal, or the definition of the updated definition of the proposal in terms of the housing parcel is purchasing existing housing on the land. And I just want that to be clear, because sometimes that gets a little bit lost in our conversation.
So the affordable housing, Concord Affordable Housing Corporation does not own that 2-family already in that corner?
No.
No. So would some of this money be going toward that, Linda? Is that what you're saying?
I'll let Marcia again reiterate the request for the housing portion of this proposal.
Okay, and Linda, thank you. I also just want to emphasize it's not a new proposal because we couldn't accept a new proposal at this point. So
No.
it is just it is a restructuring of the proposal, which is, according to Stuart, very acceptable. So
Yeah, very
Marcia,
good. Yeah.
thank you. Marcia, go ahead.
Well, the request is to purchase the land, and we have a portion of the land such that the already developed lot, which has a 2-family on the parcel, will be part of the affordable housing parcel. So that 2-family could be perhaps used by the Concord Housing Authority or another entity for affordable housing in the near term. We have not yet assessed or evaluated the construction or what needs to be updated or changed or revised, if anything, to know if it is viable for the next 50 to 100 years. So
Who owns that property now?
it's owned by the same people that own 2B. It is the Digi LLC, DIGI, the DiGiovanni family.
The Giovanni's also own that. Okay, thank you. Mary, thank you. And welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the work you've been doing on this. Everybody, I think the land that's going to be preserved will be lovely and nice for the community to share. I did want to say I live on South Meadow Ridge, and wow, there was a meeting with the neighbors. I know a few of us have attended meetings and written letters. We've never been notified of any meeting with the community. So hopefully in the future that we will be considered. We're right across the street from this land, and certainly the egress will certainly impact our use of the pathway and crossing and pulling out and all that. I think 5 units, sounds like 5 living units is what it sounds like is going to be on that parcel, which seems much more reasonable. But I assume someone will look at the traffic study there, because it's just a really complicated little intersection there. So thank you for that. And I hope that in the future, I hope also that, I assume when you put this before town meeting, the number of units will be specified, and that will be part of the proposal that we vote on. Is that correct?
That's the intention.
Okay. And is there any talk about the height? Will there be a height restriction so that the impact of visibility from, it seems like it would be pretty far from the river, but I know that was mentioned previously, that the impact sort of and the visibility of those buildings.
I think the height limitation would be the same as it already is for all other residential lots, is no more than 35 feet.
Okay, so it would, okay. So that would be like a two story.
2.5 story, yes.
2.5 story, okay, great. Thank you very much for your work on this. And I hope we can continue to be involved going forward.
Thank you, Mary. I think that's one of the things that the whole community has learned from this project. Are there any other questions or comments from anyone who's observing this? Oh, Mike Lawson. Hello, Michael.
I'm sorry, Diane. I think that was an accidental hand up. But it's nice to see everybody.
Boy, it was scary, Michael, to see your hand up. No, just teasing. Okay. Hearing, do I see anybody else's hand raised? Lee.
More. Sorry. I just think it's important for the people who weren't present at the community meeting earlier tonight at 5:30, and I'll certainly defer to Krista or Polly, but from my perspective, it was extremely positive. I did not hear one complaint or negative comment, and in general, a lot of appreciation for the reconfiguration of the open space to community housing differentiation. And I was extremely encouraged by that, and hopefully your committee is as well.
We're so grateful, and thank you for whoever organized that. We didn't know that was happening, so we couldn't attend, but I'm extremely grateful that at least I couldn't. Did anybody on our committee attend that meeting?
No, I was going to ask, how do we know when these meetings are going ahead?
Somebody wrote me and asked me some questions and asked if I was going to be there. And I said I had not been invited and I didn't think so.
Yeah,
So-
right. Okay.
So they started out as very informal meetings among just a small group of neighbors, and the list has grown and grown, and we have about 60
Okay.
people on the list now. And we've included the planning department and Lee and Liz. So anyone is welcome to join. Shoot me an email and I can add you to the list.
Well, Krista, we don't know your email, so if you, and we don't.
I can
have
put
a
it.
chat-
Oh, we don't have a chat.
We
do
don't
we?
have a chat box, so if you send that to Heather, she can then forward it to everybody on the committee who might wish to attend. How does that work for you?
That's fine. I can do that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Terrific. Nice. Kathleen has her hand raised and she's on a phone. Hello, Kathleen.
Hi, thanks for recognizing me. I'm Katie Sears. I live at 12 South Meadow Ridge. I'm actually a neighbor of Mary's, and Mary, I'm sorry you weren't on the meeting. I thought you knew about it. But I did attend the meeting, the community meeting, informal community meeting at 5:30 this evening, and I can confirm that everybody, I think, was quite happy with the plan that was shared, including myself. And I was really quite amazed that people were listening and really tried to be responsive. And I think there's lots of folks who were on the phone who really want to help with the fundraising as well. So I just want to thank everybody who's been involved with the evolution of these plans and really listening to the community. And we'll try to broaden that email list. Mary, I just sent you an email, but and hopefully others can join in. Thank you.
Katie, thank you so much for letting us know, confirming the positive nature of that meeting. You know, just well done. It takes a village, as somebody important said, and this is this is really clearly a village effort. So, Polly, were you about to say something more, or were you just? Oh, okay, terrific. So, hearing and Kathleen, okay, Katie, if you terrific, lower your hand. That's fantastic. Seeing no more raised hands. Thank you very much. We will go on and to all those people, Marcia and Lee and Liz and all the people who have attended, Krista and Polly, thank you so much. This has really been an impressive effort. Okay.
Thank you for your consideration. Good night and happy holidays.
Oh, Lee, it's been a joy. It's been good to work with such a positive group of people who are determined to solve this problem.
Yep.
So
Pretty amazing.
yeah, it really is. It makes me proud to be a Concordian. Okay, then the next concern is the next new piece of information is from the Right Tavern. And I know they're not going to be presenting in full until January, but we did receive some updated information. And does anybody have any questions about that or want to make any comment about that updated information at this point? Paul, you want to start us?
Yes, so the project's, the financial part of the project remains a bit of a mystery to me. I know there's been a lot of focus on the historical commission part. I want to put that aside. In looking at the history, well, the previous funding, comparing the amount that was requested versus the amount that was funded versus the amount that was spent, it seems to me right now there's some unspent dollars. And I'm not sure when those spent dollars from the previous funding will be spent, but clearly, I think Mr. Robfield said through the end of this year. So I'm just trying to connect that with this current funding request of $260,000. My feeling is that's probably too high, but I'm not sure how much. And you know, there has to be some track between the amount funded and the amount spent, and it's a bit out of whack here. So I'm struggling with what's the appropriate level of funding here. It doesn't seem like $260,000 is the appropriate, but I don't know how much less. I'm struggling with, you know, how to actually calibrate that.
Paul, that's beautifully put. I think we're all struggling with it. I mean, I don't think you're in any way alone, and you've done this well by bringing it up right here. I mean, this is the right place to discuss it. Do I hear other comments on that particular project or concerns given what we've seen. John?
I heard you mention that they would be appearing in January.
That's right.
I'm just wondering if we could make these concerns clearer to them, or very clear to them, that, you know, the future funding really turns on a clarity of linking how the current money will be spent to what the future money would be needed for. So I'm not sure how to get that message to them, but it seems to me if they're coming in the January meeting, that if you can put aside the conservation, not the conservation, but the preservation restriction, and assume that will work its way through during the year, those are the two big questions in my mind. And I think it'd be good if they knew exactly what Paul's just said. And
Yeah, well, John, we've actually communicated that very clearly.
okay.
Although we can certainly do so again. I mean, there's been no ambiguity, I believe, on our part about this, including conversations with them independently.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, I think we've tried to exercise due diligence in that regard. And so but your question and your comment is really valuable. Nancy. And then Paul and then Tom. Yeah.
I would just say that the financials are very mysterious, not only for this request, but for the first request, which enumerated a whole list of things that were funded at town meeting, which were not funded at town meeting. So now the different portions of the project, which were initially presented to us, both in the application and in the PowerPoint update, show that some of the expenditures have been moved around. Some are now supported by outside funding. Some of the things we thought we were funding are supported in this request. So I have tried and tried to separate those threads, and it's very difficult. And I really don't think this committee should have to work that hard to understand the status of the thinking on the first batch of money, let alone the second. So let alone the requirement to consult with and collaborate with the Historical Commission. I see no evidence even today of significant involvement of their historic preservation folks. And the estimates are based on the initial application for $500,000. And I don't see that much has changed. The reports that are presented today are the reports that were presented in 2019. So
Right.
I'm very confused about what they think they are asking for money for. And I just don't see any clarity in how the money will be spent.
There's also a question of dating on things. I mean, the reports are in 2019, but then the updates on some of the materials are undated. The amount of money spent, and I'm sure it's there someplace, but it's not clear.
Which are undated.
The engineering invoices, CSE, are undated. Now, there is a date later on some of the diagrams, which look to be 11/21, which would suggest, you know, modern dating, but I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, you know, when the invoices were, because they arrive with certain amounts of money, but no dates. So
I thought they were dated in November, but
they're not actually on the invoices. Later on, the materials drawings are dated,
right.
11/21, but not the invoices themselves. At least I couldn't find them, Nancy. They may be there, and I missed them. So,
and it's very unclear what the involvement of the historic preservation folks has been, if anything.
thank you, Paul.
Well, again, on the financial side, Nancy, I take some comfort that I'm not the only one that finds it mysterious. But the real conundrum for us, I think this is a really important project. I think this, you know, heading towards 2024 and highlighting this historical landmark is really important. but it's not the role of this commission to kind of rework the application to make it work. So that, how and if do we kind of help this to come into port? Because I think this is an important project that is worthy of CPC funding, but it's just out of joint right now.
Thank you, Paul. I think this is an important thing to hear. Tom and then Peter.
Thanks, Diane. Well, I do agree with everything that's been said so far. Having them re-forward the December 12th, 2019 report was in some ways good because it allowed me to kind of refresh my memory there. And I think on page 6 of 12, item A, for me goes to the heart of it. And the engineer articulates the seriousness of the structural condition, yes, talking about the transient nature of snow loading and what that was causing. And the recommendations, we recommend removing all the finishes in the 3rd floor attic space, as well as the 2nd floor ceiling, in order to properly assess and reframe the 3rd floor to provide suitable support of the roof. This repair and reinforcement should be considered a priority item. Right. And from my memory and perspective, we wanted to grant the funding of that first request based on this, that this was an immediate need. The structure was in an imperative, condition here, and we wanted to, even though the overall vision in the program was not in place, let's get some funding in place to get this thing stabilized, because it's just, as Paul mentioned, it's that important. Yes. And even though there were a number of unanswered questions, let's have that happen. And now we're going through, of course, the 2020 winter, but we're going to go through, the 2021 winter. And I know, of course, this takes time, but there doesn't seem to be a kind of clear response to everything we worked together on around that first one. And I agree, there's been a bit of a lack of clarity there. So I understand that it really does take more time than anybody could imagine to sort these things out. But I think maybe that's the nature of the report back to us as we, contemplate another significant round of funding. So, I still want to work with them. I think we can get there potentially, but I would want to know that they've taken extraordinary measures to make sure that we don't have a unfortunate failure.
Yeah. I think for those who were not part of the committee last year, it was the urgency of the needs that Tom is underscoring that drove so much of our deliberations last year and caused us to work with them as closely as we knew how to make certain that those concerns could be addressed expediently. So it remains puzzling. And yes, Peter.
I want to build on points made by Nancy and John. So last year, the recommendation was to fund $260,000 towards this project. And I guess my question is one of capacity. So does the capacity exist, seeing as those funds have not been expended, therefore the tasks have not been undertaken? And then to add additional tasks which are associated with the current request, I mean, is the capacity there to do all that work in the time frame that Tom just alluded to? Because this is there's a critical issue here in terms of load on the structure and on the roof.
Thank you, Peter. Nancy?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, you don't have your hand raised.
I did.
Oh, you do? Yes.
I do.
Your hand is raised.
Now I lost my train of thought, but I think it's the capacity issue is actually real because the updates that we've gotten in the current application itself show the depth of the misunderstanding of what the requirements were for the first round. And what are we seeing that has changed from that very first application and an engineering assessment of what needed to be done without the input of historical architects and conservators. So the capacity and is a big issue. I don't see where it improves, or I hope we can get there, Tom said, but I'm not clear about what that means in terms of additional funding, because some of that essential work didn't happen and it wouldn't have been that complex. But that's
I think that that the wonderful comments that have been made about the value of this property and its importance to our town just need to be underscored again and again. But the problematic thing is the nature of the application and the timing of the spending and the funding, which may mean that this is not the right time to be giving them a lot of money, but to give them some money to make ongoing efforts, and then the following year to come back. But we'll have to see. Tom.
Yeah, I agree, given that they have resubmitted the 2019 report that recommends that all finishes in the third floor attic space as well as the second floor be demolished, went exactly to our conversation point. And then in their at least initial proposed PR, they said that the interiors don't apply, and so there just has been such a gap there. So I think that around capacity, I think that's probably exactly right. They're just not able to kind of put these kind of pieces together with a kind of clarity. So in addition to that comment, what I would like to say is I for their sake and for the sake of this important structure and anybody that may be inhabiting this structure, I would love to see not a 2019 report by the consulting structural engineer, but a 2021 report that says that we've done everything necessary in terms of analysis and temporary structure to make sure there's not a failure this winter. I mean,
I agree.
That is what is required here. When a registered Massachusetts structural engineer puts together a report of this seriousness, it's got to be taken very, very seriously, or it could put people at risk and certainly have enormous liability. So I think that there needs to be some kind of careful coaching or handholding, and I agree with the earlier comment. I'm not sure I don't think it's the role of this committee to get into the depth of the consulting of how to achieve this, but these are the concerns. There's just a number of very important concerns.
And for anybody who doesn't know, Nancy and Tom have a great deal of experience and we have Melissa Sawfield online as well. Hello, Melissa. Have a great deal of experience in the restoration and support of old houses. Tom's an architect. Nancy has been very involved in all the work that's been done along Route 2A, and it's not really 2A, whatever it's called, the road.
Battle Road.
Yeah. I mean, these are two people speaking with both compassion and expertise, which I think important. Yes, Nancy, go ahead.
I just think what we've heard so far has been an old estimate at the very, very beginning of thinking about this structure. We were told it was very, very urgent, but we have not heard anything at all from the historical architects, who also are very experienced with old buildings and the way they're put together and how they react. And I don't think anybody disagrees that there are things that need to be fixed. But I think it's incumbent upon us to understand how the first $260,000 can be used to address those things.
Right.
And the second floor, it's not even, what the Historical Commission has said. There's no real plan for the building. So if you're going to have a museum, you have a different climate control system. You have different systems and needs than if it's going to be commercial office space again, which it might be because there's no provision for public access up there.
And this concerns me, the last point you just mentioned, Nancy. The evaluation 2019 says, presuming that is commercial use, as it has been and going forward. And yet we've heard from the good folks at First Parish who've been talking about this project in open forums in the town, that this might be used as an educational structure. A structure that promotes not commercial development, but promotes public access and public utility and public engagement in a really old and not unimportant structure in our town and in our history. So one of the things that I have certainly read in the letter that Melissa Sawfield's Historic Commission Committee sent to the First Parish a couple of years ago, I think November of 2019, they said, this is our 2020, November of 2020. They said, what's the purpose? How are you going to be using this? What is the mission of this building? And we still have not heard. So I hope that the people involved in this project will watch this meeting. It's being taped. They'll have a chance to look at it carefully as they move forward in their deliberations. I would ask Heather to drop them a note urging them to do so. Thank them for the materials they've sent, and then urge them to watch this and to get back to us with any questions. And then we await their presentation in January, which may, we hope, address some of these questions. Does that seem a fair way to go forward to everybody on the committee at this point?
Well, I think we have to find out what their plans are for the first $260,000.
I think that's what we're saying. And as I said, I hope that they will watch this, watch these committee deliberations.
Diane, have they committed to our first January meeting?
I believe so.
Good. Okay, good.
They almost have to, because it's in our second.
Exactly.
Our final decisions.
Exactly.
Well, we can go forward and look at the projects that we have in front of us, but I would like to say that I find it difficult because the two of the very biggest requests are in fact, I think it is the two biggest requests with except for the Assabet River Bridge. We're in a situation where we're in flux. We're being asked for we're being asked for $1 million for the land and the affordable housing, but we've got to hear kind of how much of that goes where and when. And the reason that's important is because we have to afford spend a certain amount of money on housing, affordable housing. And if we underspend that, then we've got to put some money away in a trust to support that. So, I mean, the balance of things is still kind of up in the air on that one. And from the Bright Tavern, we could go from anywhere from saying, all right, here's the other 260,000 to saying, well, no, that's 10,000, or 100,000 or something. And then that would put us in a situation where we had ample money to support everything else. So, I mean, I just think we need to hear more before we can, from my perspective, before we can actually decide things. But I would also like to take a moment to go back and look at the recreation project. Tom.
Diane, I've got maybe a question for you and for Heather, and that it sounds like they're proposing to come back in January.
Yes.
What kind of time do we have at the beginning of the year to work through this? We started to touch on that, I think, at our last meeting. It seemed like maybe we have less time in this cycle than we might have last, but I don't know what if we really have one shot at this in January, and maybe we do have time for more than that. We really need some, I don't know, some coaching or pre-meetings or something to allow them to really be successful. But I have a hard time believing that it could pull it all together.
I think they're working on it. I mean, they're trying to put together a plan to present to the Historic Commission and to us in early January. And we have two meetings, I believe, Tom, we have two meetings in January.
We have two meetings, and then we go, and then we really need to.
And then it's got to, I mean, in that second meeting, we have to make our votes and put a warrant forward. Now, I received a message from Chris.
So by that second meeting, we're in a voting situation.
Oh, yeah, we absolutely are.
Okay.
And I received a message from Chris Carmody saying that for the annual town meeting, we are holding an annual preview meeting on Saturday, January 8th at 9 a.m. We are planning to, if you are planning to submit an article for the annual town meeting, please be sure to attend or send an alternate. So I believe that's one of us. And I'm happy to attend that meeting on January 8th. But if you're making a presentation at the preview meeting, please notify Chris Carmody and or Aaron Stevens. I don't believe we are making a presentation at that point. This was a new piece of information to me, and it came in about 4 days ago, which it surprised me.
That's pretty fast.
Sarah, go ahead, and then Marcia.
I was just going to ask quickly about dates. So we're meeting January 4th.
Right.
And you said that the Right Tavern people are going to the Historical Commission. Nancy, do you know, is that before the 4th?
Oh,
because it would make
I don't have that stack in front of me.
It would make more sense if that was before. Oh, Heather knows.
Yeah, thank you, Heather.
Historical Commission meets January 13th.
So that's after our meeting, because really, ideally, it would have been the other way around.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, Sarah. That's what I was getting at too. It's
Yeah.
It's got to be very precise to get this through now.
Yeah.
You know,
let's see. First,
I'm very troubled by the extent to which we are basically going to help them rewrite their application. And maybe even go back and help them rewrite or clarify their first application. I think that's very troublesome to me. I don't think that should be our role.
You know, it's very interesting. Stuart Sagamore is a font of information.
Yeah, I bet.
And one of the things he said is that it is that CPCs often work with projects to help them, rewrite, redraft, reorganize the language and wording and nature of their proposals. So okay. We've always been a little bit stricter, but he said, oh no, he said everybody does it. So I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Well, yeah, I just don't feel it's responsible to commit, over $500,000 to a project that we have not heard any definition about, really.
Well, you're clearly reflecting the sentiment of many people. Before I want to call on Marcia for just a minute. Marcia?
Okay. Thank you, Diane. I just wanted to provide an update on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail application. That would probably be, I will be submitting a revised or supplemental information to you. I finally received the letter from Mass DOT yesterday, and they will not support fencing as requested. And so my application will need to be reduced significantly. So that will be a source of some additional funds for you. And knowing that there is, that I do have funds from this past year, as well as some remainder lands from funds from a prior year, may think about withdrawing. So I'm going to think about that a little bit further, but you'll definitely have a supplemental request for your meeting on January 4th.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's every little bit right now is a big help, Marcia. Thank you. Peter, and then John.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if Heather might be able to give a quick update in terms of where we stand with funding requests versus available funds. I think we're at a point now where they're pretty close to each other, given some changes that we discussed at our last meeting, and wanted to see if we could just chat about that for a little bit.
It's a wonderful idea. I also wanted to rediscuss the Recreation Committee's report from Kate, Peter.
Oh, yeah.
Before we do either one of those, John, what is your comment?
Oh, my thought is just to try to urge the committee to have, a bit more patience with the White Tavern folks. I mean, I think if you're right, if they listen to this tape and see the various themes that are bothering different people, they should have an ability on the 4th to answer questions about the use of the money, the preservation restriction and progress with the Historic Commission, which could well take place on the 13th, and the connection between what these urgent needs are that will be met during this money and the future. And at the same time, Diane, you're correct that we have been more flexible in the past over the years I've been on the committee with other applicants, never really holding anyone to a very specific, precise, did you spend this dollar for this? We've been much more standoffish than I think some folks are insisting on here. But I really would like to let the Wright Tavern folks have their day in court.
Thank you very much. And of course, that awaits timing. Paul, go ahead. I'm going to ask another question. Then we'll go to the recreation, and then we'll go to Peter's recommendation. Paul. Paul, you're muted. I know you love it when I say that.
I'm learning from Peter, or he's learning from me. A question about what we're doing right now. We seem to be jumping around between projects, and because I have another one I want to jump around, but I don't want to go out of order here.
We're not jumping around in terms of projects. What we're doing is going to those projects who supplied. It says right here on the agenda. If you look at the agenda, it says that and any new materials received. So it's under the any new materials received that we've been progressing.
Okay, so I'll hold
to the next.
I'll hold my comment until we get to the next.
So I mean that was not. It may have felt random, but it wasn't probably as random.
Well, I just Marcia's comment just seemed new material, so anyway.
Right. Okay. So that's the reason for the order in which we've been doing it. So two things. The protocol for discussing this with the folks at Wright Tavern. Is there anyone who would like to take the initiative to discuss this with them in a detailed way after they've had a chance to review the tape? Because I think we can't really wait till our second January meeting to hear a proposal. I mean, I think we need to have it. And if it's before the Historic Commission meets, it's before the Historic Commission meets. This is dress rehearsal for the Historic Commission, gathering with us. But I mean, I just don't think we can wait more than that if we're going to be able to make the decisions we need to make. Tom.
Then if I can be helpful, I'm happy to.
Tom, would you then reach out to Tom Wilson and to Rosalind? And that would be fantastic, because I think that's an important thing to do. And we will feel that we've exercised due diligence and been as thoughtful and supportive as we possibly can be, and as flexible as we can be under the circumstances.
Thank you.
I don't want to, I'm not comfortable saying this, but I'm going to say it, is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the town to make certain that the monies that we've given are appropriately spent. I mean, it may, whether we're comfortable saying that to any applicant, oh, I love your dog. I've never seen that before. What's its name? Who is that?
Mr. Tuck.
Mr. Tuck. Well, he's a cutie. Any rate, it's not a comfortable thing to have to say, but it is important for us to remember that we do have a fiduciary responsibility, and we can't just be saying, oh, well, they didn't quite get this right and they're doing something else. I mean, we really need to be able to be accountable to the citizens of Concord for how the money is allocated and how the money is spent. Yes, no, maybe a little yes or something from somebody, or no, or.
It's never been as tight as that over the years.
Right. Tight in terms of the amount of money we have, John?
Oh, we've had projects that failed completely, like the wall and had to be redone.
Mm-hmm.
The cemetery grant that basically had to be rebid along the way. We've been quite accommodating over the years.
Oh, I don't think we're not being accommodating, John. I think what we're doing, however, is reminding ourselves of as I said, it's not a comfortable thing for me to say, but it just reminding ourselves of a certain kind of responsibility that we have.
There are lots of projects we've never micromanaged.
This is not micromanagement.
Yeah, I would not consider this. I would consider this
No.
far from that.
It's fundamental accountability.
Well said on all parts. Thank you.
It's complicated.
Yeah, okay. Very quickly, we had a presentation by Kate Hodges about the recreation proposal. Does that change anybody's, reaction to that proposal for a minute? And Tom, I would turn to you because you had kind of scored it out at one point, and then, now we're back to discussions. I presume after that presentation, it's back on the docket as a full and viable project, but I just want to make sure that I'm not jumping the gun in any way.
Sorry, Diane, were you?
Well, Tom, you were the one I think that felt that this one was one that we could eliminate in order to save money.
Oh, last time?
Last time. So I just want to make sure.
I see. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess when I look at my current, I don't know quite how to get at that answer. Let me just take a look at what I have here. So I've remodeled everything, and I think there is money in my current model to fund some portion of that, but that. So I think it is, as I think members of the select board mentioned, all these requests are, important ones, and I do. As a professional, I do a lot of master planning for education, and so I'm a big supporter of master planning. And I think, given the range and quality of assets that we have in the town, to have a relatively current framework for decision making, I think is important. So I think it's an important project. If we're hundreds of dollars short on funding, and we have to choose, then that, maybe another year we can kind of get through from 7 years old, 8 years old, and we could make it. But I think maybe as Peter mentioned, we're pretty close here, and that would make me feel like I would want to be supportive.
Terrific. Well, I just wanted to give you a time to air that before we.
Thank you, Diane.
Very much. Paul.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I think we could fund this at something less than 75,000. But I think this allocation between all these projects, we have to kind of put them all together, because I think we've discussed Rye Tavern. I think there are a few others that I'd like to discuss, where they're worthy of funding, but maybe not the full amount. So yeah, I think this was never off the table. I think totally, but
excuse me,
I said
it was for some people. Maybe I misspoke. I said it was for some, it was off the table, but now I want to make sure that for all of us, it's back on. That's all, Paul.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Thank you. Let's pull up the chart, Heather, and let's see where we are financially for a minute. Oh, Tom.
Well, I'm just building on what you're saying, Diane, and that with Marcia's maybe footnote about preparing to make some revisions for an upcoming meeting, maybe we're even in a more favorable position.
We may be very. Okay. Okay, here it comes. So let's
everyone see my screen.
Yes, so let's go down. If we funded everything in the full, how short would we be, Heather?
It's a little over $90,000 short.
Okay, terrific. So let's go back up to the top for a minute, and let's go through and figure out which ones we can absolutely 100% fund. The Town of Concord Regional Housing, 28,000. Do I hear anybody who doesn't think we should fund that fully? Okay.
Well, I think it's a little difficult to answer this until we have, all the numbers, because it might be we just need to cut a couple back by 10,000 or whatever. So I personally, well,
that's what
I
I
feel we can do that yet.
Well, then let's just go down and get a sense. All right, Sarah, good point. So now we'll go backwards. I'll state this differently. I'm hearing a strong support for the housing and we're not talking now about trimming things, but if there's any project we think might be trimmed, let's mention it now. That one usually is untrimmable, but it's good to know that we won't make a specific. Okay, the Concord Home for the Aged.
The only question I have there, should I raise my hand? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just can't see raised hand, so you're gonna have to speak right up.
Oh, okay. The town council memo addressed the problem of painting an exterior of a historic structure and not counting it as really historic preservation, but regular maintenance. He did not say the same thing about painting the exterior of the Home for the Aged, which I think is part of this request.
It is.
I just think if we take money out of the old manse, we should consider some kind of reduction for that, for the Home for the Aged, or we should fund both the same way.
Or fund both the same way if we can. Paul.
Yeah, so I am in favor of trimming this a little bit. Can I put on my Scrooge hat a little bit? I'm sorry.
Yes, Scrooge, welcome. Are you the
it's that season. So I think I've gone through the financials here. I'm not an accountant, but I've kind of looked at what's going on. And Anita, this is a very well-run facility, and it has a lot of assets, and those assets have grown. They've done well in the market. I think those assets have grown, $400,000 or $500,000 a year. And I think this year they're proposing, I think, to fund it $56,000. Last year, they put in $190,000, which was part from the dividends that they get from the assets, and part they had to dig a little bit into the principal. But remember, that principal has grown $400,000 or $500,000 a year and is likely to grow this year as well. Now, that's not forever, but it's a facility that has $6 million of assets. I think that they could, pitch in another $50,000 if we needed it. Again, I don't know where we are at the end, but I just think that they have funds that they'd rather not spend, but they're available and they're growing. So I think this is a vibrant facility, and I don't want to shortchange any of the staff, the residents, or the construction, but I do think there's some freeboard here, as they say, as Marina, for additional funding, given the financial status of this enterprise.
Thank you, Paul. Peter.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit uncomfortable going through and talking about where we're going to reduce potential funding recommendations until we get to the bottom line here in terms of where we are with total requests now, with the changes that we heard about recently in terms of Junction Village open space, in terms of Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, the White Pond project. Maybe I'm wrong, but my numbers show that the spread is the difference is $90,600. In which case, we're not looking.
What Heather just said. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're not looking for a lot here to try and work with what we have available for funding. And I guess I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with that before we start going through and perhaps overcutting what we need to make or do in terms of recommendations.
Peter,
I second that, Peter. I feel the same.
Your point is exactly well made. I thought I was responding to what people wanted to do, which was to go through and discuss the projects they had about which they wanted to make comments. I think that's what Paul asked. And so I wanted to give him an opportunity to address about which of these projects he had thoughts. I also think it's premature. I think that we have the possibility of $80,000 being taken right out right now. And with a $90,000, and I suspect we will not be able to fully fund the Right Tavern project, regardless of what efforts we undertake. I mean, there could be some trimming there. I think we're going to be fine financially, but I just think there's too much up in the air right now before we go much more forward. Is that okay with everybody? That was what I was trying to say when we started.
Yeah, and I apologize for jumping the gun. I thought that's exactly what you were asking, going through here and asking whether we support full funding, but let's change the conversation.
Good. Well, because I just wanted to make sure, Paul, that you had an opportunity to, you said you had other projects about which you had some comments, and I wanted to give you room to do that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nancy. We can't hear you, Nancy.
I'll get used to this. I thought we had specific homework to define our priorities and sort of take a rough draft at this chart, which is what I did. And I had, I came up with possible cuts of $684,000, which we could add back if my math is right. And then I went through an exercise of looking at what projects we could add back funding for. And some I had for full funding, and a lot were like the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, the $80,000. Maybe there's something to increase there in some other places. So I thought we were going to, in general, look at more than, well, at the full range of projects in terms of.
I think that's going to have to wait, Nancy. And can we get back to the screen with everybody so we can see everybody's faces for a minute? Thank you. I think that's going to have to wait until we get grounded in a couple of these great big projects, which is where I kind of started this. The two biggest projects are up in the air in terms of how they're going to be funded and what's going to happen. And I think until we know, until we have that one, those things, well anchored, I think it's premature to think about cutting anything or not cutting things.
That's fine if we want to do it that way, but I was just trying to think ahead to certain things, like I don't know what the status is of White Pond, because we heard a lot from Delia.
Oh, it's gone. They've withdrawn their application, Nancy.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the stairs. I'm talking about the bacteria.
White Pond.
Okay.
The other one is gone. $36,000 application is gone.
Yeah, that was out of mine. Okay, fine.
Okay. So, I mean, that's not a project. I mean, that's not an application.
That's fine. It's just cutting our deliberation short. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to cut our deliberation short, but it's hard to deliberate when we're not sure how much money we have.
It's hard to assign precise numbers,
right,
if you don't have that information.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul.
So we have this spreadsheet, which is a very useful tool. Is there any way of sharing that information? I know it's for our own, we're gonna have to share it verbally, or it would be really interesting to see what everybody's thinking here to ground our own thinking. Is that a possibility? How we can
certainly go through each of the projects that way if you would like to. I've heard from some people that is premature. So I'd like to do what would serve the committee the best. And so we need to.
I'm not saying do it tonight, but I'm saying.
Oh, Morses would be our January 4th agenda. That would be the absolute essence of January 4th, Paul.
Okay. Terrific. We'll go cell by cell in the spreadsheet. That'd
right,
be great.
Absolutely. We'd go through project by project by project, see if we're short. If we are short, see where we can go back and trim, and then get a grounding.
Okay.
And then it's on the final January meeting. If we need one, we would then consummate that with a final vote. It rather depends on what we hear actually from both Marcia and the evaluation on the Assabet River Bluff project, and what we hear from what we hear about the Right Tavern. So absolutely, we go through each one very carefully. Peter.
So can we just confirm a couple of the changes that we heard about at our last meeting? So for instance, Junction Village open space, I think we heard that this has been reduced by $50,000 to $250,000.
$250,000, that's right.
And then we heard the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, if I'm not mistaken, that's been reduced to $80,000.
That's exactly right. And we heard tonight that it may be reduced entirely.
Right.
Okay.
And then we mentioned White Pond. The understanding is that application, if it hasn't been withdrawn, will be.
Yes.
That's $36,000.
Right.
Right. And then I believe we also heard that the amount that's available in the undesignated fund balance is now $237,000 plus, so $237,142. So that's an increase of about 100,000+. So is that
Heather, is
am
that?
I on the right path?
Yeah, Peter, and that's captured in Heather's recent
Recent
matrix
report
that she
to
sent
us.
to all of
It's
us.
all right there.
It's all.
Oh, it is, okay.
It's all documented there.
I apologize.
Maybe Heather, you could bring that up because it's your questions
I'm
are all
sitting and
outlined.
looking at it as you say things, Peter. Looking at my notes and looking at Heather's revised sheet.
So Diane, if I may, so
ahead,
Heather
Tom.
did a nice job is as you drop your numbers in to the H column, it automatically fills in the bottom of the, whatever the line 47 and
That's
compares
right.
it to the funds available and gives you a bottom line.
That's
So
exactly right.
the formulas are working very well.
And that's what we would do on January 4th. Is
So
plug in.
my apologies. I did not see that.
Okay. Well,
No worries. And Paul is to thank for the all the numbers working correctly because I'm not good at Excel.
Well, and you have to make sure you don't enter the amount in column H, that the amounts should be added into columns E, F, and G, and then they roll up into that cell. So, right, so H is really a summation of each row.
thank you. For such a mind, we are so blessed. So Peter, does that make sense to you now?
It does, and once again, apologies. I just hadn't seen this this specific spreadsheet.
No
So,
apologies necessary. Okay, Sarah.
I'd just like to confirm my understanding that the goal here is not to necessarily spend all the money, because we could hold some back.
We could save some. I mean,
Right.
in some
If we
years,
didn't feel that, all of them needed all the money.
that's right.
Right. Okay, thanks.
We could. It's always, shouldn't say always, because there are people on this committee who have that perspective. It's only my fourth year, but our third. But anyway, by and large, it is not imprudent to spend as much of it wisely as we can. So, okie doke. So I think let's go back to our agenda. Okay. Review of the voting process. We will, what we will do is meet on January 4th. We will go over each project after we've heard from Wright Tavern. We'll then go over each project, plug in what we think are the final numbers. I always, just as a human being, like to make decisions and then sit on them for a little bit. So I hope that we can make the decisions on January 4th in a kind of preliminary way, and then gather at the second meeting in January and confirm those decisions and nail them in. And that will produce the warrant. If we have a disagreement of any kind, then there will be a formal vote. So if somebody says, I don't want to fund this at all, and somebody else says, I want to fund it fully, then we'd have to, first of all, have a proposal, and then there'd have to be a second, and then we'd have to have a formal vote. It's wonderful if we can work by consensus, but if we can't, we can't. That's kind of how. Burton, hello. So that's the way it usually works. So that's the voting process, and that will formally begin really on January 4th. Peter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Tom?
Thanks, Diane. Heather, do you think it's possible that we might have Marcia's revised requests before the 4th, like even if it's the day before or the evening before? So if we're going to put together our spreadsheets, it might incorporate that, or, oh, Marcia, I'm sorry, you're there. Oh, thank you. I don't know if that's possible. If we're going to maybe present our matrices or something, that would be would help us to be efficient if that's possible. I don't know if it is.
I will do my best to make that happen.
Wow.
Thank you, Marcia, so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Paul,
Yes, I'm going to reveal my engineering background here. And there are in the committee, we're likely to have different amounts here. And so rather than kind of going through all the different amounts, is there some way for maybe one person for each project to kind of come up with a straw man, and then we discuss that, yes, no, up or down, as opposed to comparing everybody's number? Because I'm just trying to, figure out how we take this whole matrix of numbers and converge on it.
well, I can tell you the way we've done it in the past, Paul, and
Okay.
it doesn't mean that there's not room for, for something to be done more effectively. And I would turn, to Tom and John and Burton for either affirmation that this is the way it's done or for corrections. Okay. A project has come up. We've discussed it. We've made an assigned amount of money. And if people said, no, I don't want to fund it that much, we've discussed why. And then we've gone on to the next project and we've moved systematically down the chart, item by item by item. And then as we make those decisions, the bottom number, the bottom line begins to adjust and change. And if at some point we can see that we have ample resources to fund fully or mostly fully all of the projects we have, then that leads to a somewhat easier decision-making process. I don't think we probably are going to have exactly that amount of money. We're going to be shy, and so we have to figure out the best way to move forward. But it usually is by discussion, Paul, and it's usually item by item by item. Sometimes we identify first those items which we think, okay, we can actually just fund those, boom, and then go back from there and see where we are. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really the default is what the application says, and then we work from that.
Right.
Yes, or we work down from that. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's weird. Tom, am I right or am I wrong?
I think you are right. I'm just building on what you just outlined, Diane. I think it seems to me, if I'm remembering correctly, that we have taken kind of a first pass at some of these to see where there's some general alignment, and we'll need to go through them, Diane, as you mentioned, for some where we know there's going to be a need to kind of figure out where we all are. But as I recall over the last couple of years, then we did, Paul, to that point, like put out a scenario to say, all right, here's something that everybody could react to. And then folks can say, well, we are still not aligned on that scenario A around items A, C, and F, or, we just need to go back into the depth there. But yeah, I think it can be helpful, that kind of straw man kind of model at the right time.
Okay, well, you guys have the experience. We'll just ride along.
The search for consensus sometimes has some adjustments at the last minute. A little bit here and a little bit there. Everybody says, yeah, I could live with that.
Yep.
Can we twist our arms virtually? Is that what we're trying to do?
Well, there we're going to go. I mean, I think that, I just have to say, it's such a good committee. I mean, it's such an incredibly smart and attentive committee, and everybody's worked so hard that I can't imagine we can't have a good and constructive conversation to try to figure all this out and come out with the applicants feeling they've been thoughtfully and well served and accommodated and cared for. So, I mean, I think, and that we've also been responsible, to the citizens of Concord for doing this wisely. So I think we'll be okay. Anybody who wants to disagree with that, speak up. I didn't think you'd say you weren't smart, capable and talented. I mean, look what we've got here. I mean, look at the talent sitting in front of us. Oh my gosh. Okay. Other business, approval of minutes. May I hear a motion to approve the last minutes? I can't open my computer screen. I've read them, and Sarah made one recommendation, and I didn't see that same mistake that Sarah wisely caught. But Sarah, would you like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from, I think it was November 30th, 2021.
It is. May I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Burton. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Any opposed?
Yes.
Oh, Peter, would you like to say why you're opposed?
Nope. I'm not opposed. I'm saying yes.
Oh.
He's got delayed Wi-Fi.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, is there any public comment about our madcap deliberations tonight? Anything from Linda or Mike or Marcia or Beth? Linda, you're muted. I'm gonna get you a t-shirt too.
You're ending on a high note, so have a good holiday, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I move to adjourn then.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I
I would second that.
Okay, Tom,
I,
Sarah,
Aye.
John,
Yes?
Nancy? I think we saw you say aye, but we couldn't hear you. Peter,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Burton,
Yes.
and I. Okay, and it is unanimous, and as Concord says, I do so declare. Have a wonderful holiday, everyone. Don't even think about this for at least a week. Okay. Thank you all. And Heather,
Bye.
enjoy Charlotte in her first, really her first Christmas and holiday. Okay.
Thank you.
Like fun.
Bye, everyone.